Hello, Year 11. Welcome to your next lesson on functions. Today we're going to be looking at inverse functions and how we work them out and then how we use them. So, first thing I want you to do is pause the video now and have a go at either the red, amber, or green sections. All I want you to do is rearrange the formula to make the variable in brackets the subject. So, using what you did on Friday's lesson, can you pause the video now and can you rearrange the 4 questions from the box you choose? Okay, guys, you should be just about sorted with that. What I now want you to do, the answers are now on the screen. I want you to mark them and check where we are up to. If you have struggled with these, if you have struggled with the red section and you have got them wrong, you need to go back to the Maths Watch activity we did on Friday and do some more practice before moving on with this video. You will really struggle with the rest of this work if you cannot rearrange formulas accurately. So, functions. Now we know functions, for example, f of x equals 2x plus 3, gives us, we can take an input, we can put the input through the function machine, and we get an output. Now we can represent functions as an actual function machine. So if we thought about this first one, we times by 2, then we add 3, and that then gives us our output. So I put my input in, times by 2, that's my 2x, give me 10, add 3 on afterwards, and I get my output of 13. And we can continue with these. So we'll go with the next one. We can put as a function machine. We're going to square our input first because that's our x squared. Then we're going to subtract 4, and that gives me my output. So 6 squared is 36. Take away my 4 to give me 32. Same with sine. Sine of 45. Put that through. I just got the one part of my function this time, and that will give me 1 over root 2. Remember, guys, this links back in, this bit especially, back into our trig identities. Now, what we need to think about is what happens if we need to go backwards. Now, we know we could work this output out, because if I think about my input, we times by 2 first, then we add 3. Well, if I want to go the other way, we can subtract by 3 and divide by 2. And we can represent this using flowcharts. It's just a case of solving the equation, because what we're doing is we know that the output, so f of x is 11, so we end up with 11 equals 2x plus 3, and we can solve. However, what we don't want to do, okay, is have to solve for every single output we have. Okay, we don't want to have to keep solving equations each time, solving an equation, because it could get quite cumbersome, especially if we've got a more complex function each time. So what we need to think about instead, we need to think about, can we create ourselves a function itself to take us from the output to the input? Now we'll call this the inverse function. Okay, it's going backwards, it's doing the opposites, it's doing the inverses. Okay, we write this inverse function as f to the minus 1 of x. Now, what I do not want you to get confused with, we have seen before that if we have something like x to the minus 1, it means 1 over x. Okay, in this case, f to the minus 1 of x, because suddenly we are talking about functions, okay, all this means is it is the inverse of f of x. It is not 1 over f of x. Okay, different thing entirely. Just make sure you know that these two parts are not related at all. Okay, so we have the inverse function of f of x, which is going to be f to the minus 1 of x, and we need to be able to generate this. Now, we can link this to flowcharts, we can link it to solving equations. What we try and do, okay, is a big hint from the start of the lesson. What we are looking to do is we are looking to rearrange our equation. Okay. Now there are some nice, simple steps for us to follow with regarding this. Okay. Now I want us to go through the form of changing the subject, rearranging the equation by balancing, because we may come across some more challenging ones. The first step I always want you to do is we swap f of x for y. Okay, that's the first thing. So if I've got my f of x equals x plus 4, I'm going to change this to y equals x plus 4. The second step is I am going to make x the subject. Now, obviously, if you've got a function where x appears more than once, we're going to have to do more work to rearrange, but we want just x to be the subject of the equation. So for us in this one, it's nice and simple. All I'm going to do is I am just going to split my equation down the middle. To get x onto its own, all I need to do is subtract 4 from both sides. So I can have y minus 4 equals x. So I've made x the subject. Okay, x is on its own, there's only one of them, everything else is on the other side. Last part you are going to do, okay, is we now swap. We swap x for f to the minus 1 of x, and we're going to swap our y for an x. Now that's really, really important that we get those the right way round. Okay, so my x becomes f to the minus 1 of x. My y becomes my x. And there, we can just write it the other way around as well. So it's in a form that we recognise a little bit more. That will now give us our inverse function. Okay, so there's 3 steps to this. We swap f of x for y. Okay, put it into the form of y equals. We rearrange to make x the subject. Okay, obviously that may well take a few more steps than what is shown here. Once we've made x the subject, we swap in. We change x for f to the minus 1 of x. We change y to x, and we have our inverse function. Right, let's just have a look at another one. So remember, guys, we can change these letters. Okay, it doesn't matter. It's just a different way of labeling a function. So g of x equals 5x. So first thing I'm going to do is this time it's going to be swapping g of x for y. So this now becomes y equals 5x. Second step, make x the subject. So I'm going to rearrange, and I need to make x the subject of my formula or my equation. So this time I'm going to need to divide both sides by 5 to get x onto its own. So we will end up with y over 5 equaling x. Finally, the last part, we need to make a couple of swaps. So we swap x for f to the minus 1 of x. We should swap our y for an x. So we'll have x over 5 equals f to the minus 1 of x. And again, we have our inverse function. Okay. Again, if you wanted to, we can just swap these round, just so it's in that form we recognise a little bit more. 3 steps for every single one we do. Okay, remember guys, this bit here may be a little bit harder. It depends entirely on what your function is. But this process, the 3-step process each time, is going to be exactly the same. Okay, right. 2-step equation this time, but what I want you to do, I want you to pause the video now. I want you to have a go at this one for me. Remember the 3 steps we need to go through. Have a go at it, and then we will talk through it. Okay, guys, so h of x this time, again, doesn't matter. It's just a different way of labeling it. So, first step is going to be swap h of x this time for y. So we are going to go to y equals 4x plus 2. Right, second step, make x the subject of our equation. Okay, 15. So, same as before, we need to rearrange this equation now to make x the subject. So, I need to move the 2 first, so I'm going to subtract 2 from both sides. So I will have y minus 2 equals 4x. Then I'm going to need to divide both sides by 4. So we're just going to use a fraction to help show this. So we'll have y minus 2 over 4 equals x. And I've changed the subject, I've rearranged to make x the subject of my equation. Last bit, do my 2 swaps. So I need to swap x for f to the minus 1 of x. I need to swap my y for an x. So I'll become x minus 2 over 4 equals, swap my x out, f minus 1 of x. And I have my inverse function. Okay, I want you to pause again. Can you have another go at this one, please? So pause video. Can you try f of x equals 3x minus 4? Can I have the inverse function, please? Okay, guys, right, let's have a look. So, swap f of x out for y. So we'll go y equals 3x minus 4. We need to change to make x the subject. So I'm going to need to plus 4 to both sides. So I end up with y plus 4 equals 3x. I need to divide both sides by 3. So I can end up with y plus 4 over 3 equals x. Last part, swap out x for f to the minus 1 of x and y for x. So I end up with x plus 4 over 3 equals f to the minus 1 of x. Again, I have my inverse function. Again, can we pause? Can we have a go? Slightly different one to rearrange, but exactly the same idea. So pause, have another go for me, please. Okay, guys, slightly different type of equation to rearrange, but we should still be nice and happy with these. So same process, y equals x over 3 plus 2, so swap y in. Then we need to make x the subject. So take 2 from both sides. Gives me y minus 2 equals x over 3. To get x on its own, the opposite of dividing by 3 is to times by 3. So you've got to be careful with this. You can either use brackets or you can times each individual term straight away. What might be easier, times each individual term. When you times an expression by 3, you can either use the brackets or we can go 3y minus 6. Make sure you multiply all parts equals x. Now we do our swap. Y becomes x. X becomes f to the minus 1 of x. Be really, really careful, guys. When you're timesing, make sure you times everything by 3. Okay, right, slightly more difficult, more steps, but still the same process. So we've got f of x equals 2x squared minus 7. Same process still. So we go y equals 2x squared minus 7. So we put y in. We now need to make x the subject. So first step, add 7 to both, which gives us y plus 7 equals 2x squared. Make sure you get your order right from here. So now, because the squared is only acting on the x, I need to get rid of the 2 first. So it means I've got 2 lots of x squared. So the inverse is going to be to divide by 2. So I'm going to end up with y plus 7 divided by 2 equals x squared. Finally, the opposite of squaring, the inverse of squaring, is to square root both sides. So we're just going to leave this in a big square root. We'll have y plus 7 over 2 all square rooted equals x. Last step, swap in what we need. So we're going to have the square root of y is going to become x. So we'll have x plus 7 over 2. X becomes f to the minus 1 of x. Okay. But again, more complex function at the start, but same three processes. Y swaps in for f of x. Rearrange to make x the subject. Swap in x for y and f to the minus 1 of x for x. Right, using that last example, can you pause the video again and can you have a go at that one, please? Okay, guys, right. Same idea, shouldn't hopefully be any more difficult. So 5x squared minus 2 will go y equals 5x squared minus 2. So y comes in for f of x. Now we make x the subject. So first thing, get rid of that minus 2. Opposite of subtracting 2 is to add 2. So we'll have y plus 2 equals 5x squared. Because the squared is only acting on the x and not the 5, I need to get rid of that 5 first, so I'm going to divide by 5. So we'll have y plus 2 over 5 equals x squared. Finally, inverse of squaring is to square root. So we will have the square root of y plus 2 over 5 equals x. Last bit, swap in what we need. So y becomes x, x becomes f to the minus 1 of x. And again, we have our inverse function. Just want to show you a couple of slightly harder ones. So again, exactly the same idea here. So f of x equals 7x plus 7 over 8. Again, just a slightly more complicated initial function, same process. So we still go y equals 7x plus 7 over 8. We still need to make x the subject. So all we've got to do is make sure we get the order correct. First thing I need to get rid of, if I've got a fraction and all of my expression is under that fraction, I need to get rid of that first. So the opposite of dividing by 8 is to times by 8. When I times y by 8, it's going to become 8y equals, my times gets rid of my denominator, so I'll have 7x plus 7 left. Now we just follow through as we have done with every other one. So we'll subtract 7 from both to give me 8y minus 7 equals 7x. Last step, divide both sides by 7. Gives me 8y minus 7 all over 7, because I'm dividing the whole expression, equals x. And again, we make our swaps, so y becomes x, x becomes f to the minus 1 of x. It is still just the three-step process to make our inverse function. Okay, all this is based on, guys, is just rearranging equations. Again, pause the video, please, guys, and can you have a go at the one in front of you? Okay, so we become y equals 3x minus 1 over 2. Then we make x the subject. That's the key to all of these, guys, making x the subject. The denominator of 2 acts across the whole of the right-hand side. The first thing I need to get rid of is that. Opposite of dividing by 2 is times in by 2. So this will become 2y equals 3x minus 1. Now I can balance the rest as I have done previously. Opposite of subtracting 1 is to add 1. So we'll have 2y plus 1 equals 3x. Inverse of times in by 3 is to divide by 3. So we will have 2y plus 1 over 3 equals x. Final step, y becomes x. X becomes f to the minus 1 of x. Okay, right. Again, slightly more difficult. All this is, guys, the only reason these get more difficult is because the rearranging gets a little bit harder. Okay, that's all this becomes. So we've got f of x equals 3 over x minus 1. Okay, so same process. Again, it's just the rearranging. We should have had practice of this rearranging last week, so it shouldn't be too challenging. So y equals 3 over x minus 1. Again, I need to make x the subject. Okay, so to rearrange this to make x the subject, first of all, I need to get x to be either a numerator or on its own. I cannot have it as a denominator. Because x is at the moment connected to this minus 1, I'm going to have to times both sides by that whole expression. So I'm going to have to times both sides by x minus 1. Now, what that now means is my left-hand side becomes y lots of x minus 1. And that then equals, these two will cancel each other out, so that equals 3. Now again, we could either use brackets here or we can times it straight away. Okay, either way, you're going to have to multiply your brackets out afterwards, but we could have just done x times y and minus 1 times y. We'll expand the brackets out now, so we end up with, if we wanted to use our grids, we have y, x and minus 1. So we'll have x, y, and a minus y. So this becomes xy minus y equals 3. I've just got to make x the subject now. So all I'm going to do is get rid of the y first, so I can add y to both sides. So that will give me xy equals 3 plus y. Then, to get x on its own, I need to divide both sides by y. So I'm going to end up with x equals 3 plus y over y. Slightly harder rearranging, yes. Last step is still the same. X becomes f to the minus 1 of x. Y becomes x. Again, guys, it's the rearranging that's harder. You've got to have had good practice at rearranging and be comfortable with it. When we multiply up our denominators from here, we can bring it up as a whole bracket and then just use a little bit of expanding brackets to help us. Okay. The last example was probably the hardest one I'm going to ask you to do today. What I want you to do is I want you to make sure you've made plenty of notes from the video, go back onto Show My Homework and have a go at the questions on there, please.